Welcome. All right. I always do that. It's Louis Brantmeyer here. Welcome to Clover Orbits, your favorite Star Trek podcast on YouTube. Yes, there's a list of maybe 10. And we are at the top. We have with us a special guest star who is not Richard Futrell. Richard Futrell is a star, but he's always here. Richard, are you there?
I'm here.
Welcome. Actually, no, you're there. I'm here. You're there.
I'm here.
No, I'm here. You're clearly there.
Good.
Okay, thank you. We have another special guest. Her name is Tally.
That's not my name.
Destiny Tally.
That is my name.
Okay.
Hello. I'm slightly terrified by this.
Okay.
And I didn't know this was like a Star Trek podcast.
Well,
I did specifically ask that question. And you're like, no, it's not always that. It sounded like
it is tonight.
It's definitely that. And it's way up on the list.
It will be tonight, but someday we may talk about your movie. Destiny wrote a movie called
Meet Me There.
Meet Me There, which sounds like it's about you because it's about there. Because we all know here is where I am. I'm just kidding.
It's not about you. It's about me.
It's about her. And actually, Richard, I think it would be cool for us to do that movie at some point in the future. So
sounds good.
As to broaden our podcast range. And, So anyway, to move forward into the plan that we were on, the trajectory that we've been on for a while, with our fun and games aside, for the moment, we've been talking about the Borg episodes of all of the series. So this cybernetic race bent on conquering other races, and the episodes that they star in to develop a really nuanced, interesting idea and conversation around them. So last week, or in the past week, we watched the only episode of Deep Space Nine that they appear in, Emissary, where in 5 minutes they brutally murder and destroy lots of people and things, displaying their menace. I actually wept. Yeah.
Oh?
Yeah.
Just this last week?
Well, no, that was today.
Oh.
I'll talk more about that when we get there. Then there was Blood Fever, which the episode was about something completely different than the Borg, and really I almost feel like we shouldn't have watched that scene. Did you watch it, Richard?
I watched only that scene.
Yeah, I watched the scene leading up to it, which made it a lot better, but because then I felt like I got some of the episode. But I think the scene would have been much better in context, as a little epilogue to the episode. But it was a decent scene.
The episode did not look good.
Okay, well, I'm glad you skipped the episode.
I skimmed through it and watched a few parts, and yeah.
Yeah, I didn't watch the episode. The episode actually, in context of the season, is much better. But that's Voyager for you. So then we watched the episode called Unity, which we can talk about that title in a second, but it is the first appearance of the Borg, per se, on Voyager. And I take it you would like me to do the summaries, Richard?
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, man, I've been talking all day, and I will continue talking. Poor Destiny. No, you're awesome, Destiny. The first scene is absolutely heart-wrenching. So it takes a chapter from Star Trek history and makes it the centerpiece of the backstory of the main character of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. He is a loving father and husband, an African-American man who was super proud, Avery Brooks was, to play the character because it took a huge stride towards ethnic equality on television to have him be the lead on a show like this. And there was a lot of stuff behind the scenes about that. But he's really richly and deeply written and articulated, And so you get this scene where, from the Battle of 359, the Borg are basically terrorizing Starfleet. They're destroying ships left and right. And so we actually get to see some of what happens, some of the carnage, some of like, this is horrific. I had no idea that it was this bad. Because in Next Gen, we see the before and then we see after. We see this like graveyard of ships. So it was actually, I mean, I thought it was kind of cool to see that. I mean, I'm not into violence and carnage, but it was a good depiction as part of like a dramatic story.
There's nothing wrong with enjoying some violence.
So this is Richard. Meet Richard. Richard is famous for at times orbiting certain things and making jokes about them. Well, for a while it was crime. He would just be like, I wonder how we can relate this to crime. And I wonder how much crime goes on in that part of the continent. And it was absurd because everything got related to crime. And then it was doctors.
Oh.
And then it was criminal doctors.
Whoa!
And then,
mind blown.
Yeah, and then for a while it was liquid trash.
I've never
that was a good
thought
one.
of that in my whole life.
You have never, yeah, that's Richard's stock and trade. It's an extraordinary amount of time thinking about things that no one else does. I love him. I love you, Richard.
Okay, so violence is one of those.
Okay, so anyway, just no, I think our listeners deserve a taste of the character that you are. So two things. One thing that Richard does is whenever we're talking about like a problem, he says, you know what the solution is? Put cameras in all the bathrooms.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, in context. Richard, what's the context for that joke?
We were wondering what to do because all of our knives and forks were disappearing.
No, Richard, that's not the original context.
But
Yeah, that's the original context.
you store your knives and forks in the bathroom, and that's why you need cameras there?
No,
No.
it wasn't me that said it. Someone else said it to me, and I thought I would just.
It was at a convenience store in like Los Angeles.
No.
Okay.
Was it in California?
It wasn't California. It wasn't at a convenience store.
You ever met before?
Yes, we have. We lived with each other for 6 months
Okay.
at a boarding school for smart people in North Louisiana. It's really cool.
Anyway.
So okay. For our listeners, that was a rabbit trail. I hope you enjoyed it. But violence. So Richard was clearly making a joke that it's okay to enjoy. I mean, I guess it's okay to enjoy violence in the context of drama, right?
Look, most entertainment throughout history has been violence, like gladiators, and like people used to go to shows where they were just like poking animals. So this is just inherently entertaining, and it's okay if we enjoy it.
Did you hear the ringing chimes?
No.
Oh, good. Thank God. I shouldn't have said anything.
Anyway,
So, okay.
I like that even in the first minutes of Deep Space Nine, they're already relying on the trope of calling out shield percentages as a way to build tension.
Yeah.
It didn't even take him a minute until we got some shield percentages.
Well, actually, it's actually dramatic in this context because the shields reduce so quickly that you're like, oh my God, they're about to die.
Yeah,
You're like,
it was
it's dramatic and terrifying.
It was a well done scene.
I like that they had an opening crawl. I thought it was a little too short for an opening crawl. So the opening crawl is like in Star Wars where they got the words. And I felt like if you're going to have an opening crawl, you really need a bit more content than like 2 lines. However, it added this like epic quality. It was like bum 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 in a visual form. I thought some of the ships were going faster than they should. Like, did you see that Ambassador class ship as it was fighting the Borg cube? It like moved and weaved really fast. You know what I'm talking about?
Killer.
Oh, that's okay. So I guess they upped their visual effects budget or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you can tell right off the bat that they've got better effects on Deep Space Nine, The Next Generation.
I love Destiny's got these sunglasses on. It's really, I mean, I guess you need those.
I'm
I guess
crying
you're
on
in
the inside.
Oh, no.
No, okay, I have a a legitimate
Sorry.
question for
Please,
both people
please,
in,
yeah.
in the quote
In the
room.
room.
All right, as someone who doesn't understand Star Trek, someone who, like, would be totally fine never speaking the words again, tell me from the deepest places of your heart, Deep Space Nine places of your heart, why one would need to invest their time in this.
Oh, my God.
Because you told me it has profound elements and that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. So talk to me
Because
about
it's fun
It
and
is-
interesting and exciting and cool.
it. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good answer. For me, it is it's a form of literature that is intricate, intelligent, cultured, like entertaining to orbit and to come back to and learn from, and analyze and engage with.
Sorry, I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing at the environment.
Oh, okay, with the open thing.
Yeah.
You
Sorry.
saw her. So we're parked, for our listeners, we are parked on some random residential street in northeast Austin, and somebody came by with an open trunk and thought she was just driving with an open trunk, and it looked pretty absurd. It was kind of one of those visual images that would be a great representation of Richard's sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's really entertaining. It's really engaging. I grew up on it, so there's never been a time when I didn't love it, like absolutely dearly and deeply. And it's one of those things that I just do. Actually, before I die, I'm going to be on an episode of Star Trek with my brother. We both got experience acting.
Mm-hmm.
My brother's the virtuoso. And there's a new Star Trek that's coming out in September. And so hopefully it'll go for 5 or 6 years. And by the time, we get to the 5th or 6th year, me and my brother can be either extras or part of the peripheral cast and contribute to it. So, and really, so the cultural significance of Star Trek is back in the time when people were at odds, when the civil rights shit was going on in the 60s, when the Cold War was going on, it portrayed a future where a Russian, a black woman, a Scotsman, and a couple Americans, and then an alien all together were working together, treating each other as equals, respecting each other without a single question about the value or the importance of dignifying everyone in the room. And so I grew up with this cultural trope of treating everybody with respect, tolerating different viewpoints, and believing that a better future was possible, both through technology and through us all working together and getting along. And so it has served as this profound vision of a future of an ideal utopian future worth achieving, worth building towards, worth accomplishing, that has inspired politicians, scientists, technologists, computer scientists, all across the board. People pick up this show and they're like, yeah, I agree, and I love this, and I think it's worth asking the questions that get asked in these shows. And it in the beginning was a really cool way of analyzing racial and other issues in a subtextual format. So you could ask questions publicly through this show that the networks wouldn't. They felt, that's too controversial for us to put on the air. Mm-hmm. A black woman kissing a white man on TV, which this was the first one that happened, was actually on Star Trek. So, and then the first female lead of a major sci-fi show was Captain Janeway, who you saw. So anyway, there's an objective significance to it. Yeah. Culturally, which is why it's in our vernacular, beam me up, Scotty, and all of that. And there's a subjective, draw to it. So, yeah. I feel like you respect and understand now.
I do have a deeper respect now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
You're welcome. That's what I feel about the whole day. It's thanks for sharing. So, thanks for listening. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, Richard, can you hear?
Yes. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, cool. You're welcome. So I
just imagine him putting the phone down and going doing errands, and he just comes back and says, "Yes, thanks for sharing."
yeah. He was just waiting for his cue to start to reengage. So there's a lot to back to our first scene, right? there's a lot to appreciate about this scene. Like, I was making my salad as I was watching it, which is really tragic because it deserves one's full attention. And the like intensity with which Avery Brooks portrays this character Cisco, the like eloquence with which his facial expressions, etc., speak to the viewer, it was so like moving to me that you get this scene where the ship's been brutally damaged, it's about to like be destroyed, and he's trying to save his wife, who has been caught under some debris and is dead. And like he yells out, I thought this was a classic Avery Brooks moment. He goes, "Help me!" And it's like sing-song. You know what I'm talking about, Richard?
Yeah, he has that sort of tone of voice a lot.
Yeah, he's got this weird like tonality and cadence, these different things that he can do with his voice, and I don't think he's always conscious of exactly how it comes off because it almost sounded like he was singing, "Help me!" And it was like, I mean, I've seen all of these before, and part of what's there for me with Star Trek is what's called the mere exposure effect. The more exposure you have to a certain stimulus, the more likely you are to evaluate it positively. Mm-hmm. So a lot of acting and a lot of subtlety and intricacy that's actually objectively bad, I just didn't notice and I don't care about and I treat as normal and I like. Mm-hmm. So now that I'm going back, I can like be like engaged with it in a way that wouldn't have happened if I just watched it on my own. So for the podcast, it's like really enjoying this thing that I already love in a way that I couldn't otherwise. So, yeah, the sing-song quality to his voice. And then you know he can't save his wife. His wife is stuck there. She's dead. He's forced to leave her with his son, and they go into an escape pod and the ship blows up as they're escaping. And so like I thought that was tragic, and that was when I wept because I felt with him. I imagined feeling what I would feel if my wife had died. Like if someone I deeply loved, cared for, nourished, attended to, I couldn't save her. And of course, this is kind of like the hook for the rest of the episode. The rest of the episode is him working through dealing with that tragedy and like eventually resolving it for himself, which like just that scene, Richard, made me want to watch all of Deep Space Nine.
In fact, the battle scene isn't the only one with the Borg. There's also flashbacks to the battle when Sisko's inside the wormhole, in which you see Borg Picard on the screen.
Oh, yeah,
we
that's
could also
right.
discuss those.
That's not technically about the Borg. We could. I mean, like, so the real import of this whole scene is that the Borg are a menace, and they're horrific, and they did some stuff historically that's really terrible, and they stand out like all they really need is that first scene in Deep Space Nine, and they cast a long shadow. Like eventually the Defiant gets built to fight the Borg. It's this really nimble, agile ship, sort of like my car, which I've named the Defiant. So anyway, what did you have a lot of thoughts about this episode or scene?
I thought it was very well done. I thought the whole episode is very well done. It really made me excited about Deep Space Nine, even though I've already seen all of Deep Space Nine.
Did you watch the whole episode, Richard?
Yeah.
Oh.
I started the Borg part, and then I just kept on going.
Yeah, I would have. I really would have if I hadn't been. Yeah. I had a time constraint. I had a date with Destiny.
Oh wow.
I had a fate. What do you call it? Fate was calling. So I had to make myself. Anyway, yeah, we should do DS9. You think? At some point.
I think it would be a big investment to do all of it. We can do some good episodes.
I'll ask you again in 4 months or something.
Cool.
When you've forgotten. So then we get the episode Blood Fever, Voyager is in the Delta Quadrant, which is the home space of the Borg. And you know that the other shoe is going to drop from the moment they're there in this. So they get tossed to this other side of the galaxy, Voyager, and they're just and they're stuck there. And you know that eventually they're going to run up against the Borg because that's where the Borg live. And so you've got this sense of building dread through the whole. I mean, if you're a hardcore viewer and you know what's going on through the first 2-3 seasons, And then they start dropping these little hints that, you're about to be fucked. In Blood Fever, they're on this planet, they're exploring, and then they encounter, like, a corpse of this Borg drone. And actually, Richard, didn't it look creepy? I thought they did well to make it look creepy.
It did look creepy. When they saw it, Janeway said, the Borg. I think it would have been cooler if she didn't say that, because it was kind of like they thought the audience was stupid.
yeah, like...
Sometimes they are.
Sometimes they are. We've been talking about this. We were talking about
That's my entire
people.
commentary on that scene.
That was it? Yeah, it was a really short scene. I mean, it was really punchy. I almost feel like we shouldn't have watched it. I feel like, well, I mean, it's good. The Borg, right, whatever. But I think it repeats the same motif of Emissary, of the scene with Sisko, where, like, they're this menace, they're terrifying, they're horrific, and their very name strikes fear into the minds of those who see them, know that they're there. So, yeah. So there was that, and then there was the next episode, which we're making good time, I think. The next episode was called Unity. And, Richard, do you want to do the summary for this one?
Sure, I'll describe it. So I think this is one of the most interesting Borg episodes, and probably one of the most interesting Voyager episodes. So anyway, So what happens is the Voyager crews, they're all on the bridge, and then there's like something, they get a signal from a buoy that's from a Federation something, and from a planet, and so they send down Chakotay and some ensign to the planet, and Chakotay and the ensign get to the planet. It turns out it's a war zone, which we know because there's burning trash cans everywhere. And then they get in a firefight, and they get shot, and the ensign gets shot, and Chakotay gets shot. And eventually Chakotay wakes up, and there's this woman taking care of him, and it's part of this group, and they say they're part of, there's a lot of warring factions on this planet, and they're part of a group that's, quote, based on shared responsibility. So meanwhile, back on the ship, the B story is that Voyager is, running around, and they eventually, in a very scary scene, encounter a deactivated Borg cube. And everyone's very worried about that. But anyway, back on the planet, Chakotay is hanging out with these people, and he's severely injured. Like, it really looks like he just got hit on the head or something, but they say he's severely injured. And
neurological degradation,
Yeah, he has neurological degradation. There's a lot of neurobabble in this episode. So he's got so he senses that something is up and that these people aren't really telling him everything, and so he's sort of sneaking around, and he follows the woman around a little bit, and he sees that she her hair is actually a wig, and he sees her without her wig on, and she's got cybernetic implants on her skull, and he slowly realizes these people they have Borg implants, and it turns out she tells him that they were formerly Borg. And they somehow got broken off from the collective, like in a Tower of Babel type situation. And now they're on this planet and they're warring. And they have a weird sort of nostalgia and the happiness about, they remember being in the Borg and they sort of liked it. Even though up to this point the Borg have been nothing but evil and bad, interestingly at this point they seem to miss it. And furthermore, she tells Chakotay the only way they can save him is by temporarily linking him to them in a little miniature collective with them. And Chakotay is horrified. He's like, no way, you're not putting a neuro implant in me. And they tell him the only way they can save him is by doing this, because then there'll be neuroelectric fields that will heal him. There's a lot of neuroelectric fields in this episode. But, So eventually Chakotay decides to go through with it because he's going to die otherwise. And so they hook him up to the collective using some kind of implant on it, like not an implant, but something they put on his neck or something. That doesn't involve an invasive procedure. And they all circle around him, and now he's linked up to them in their mini collective, and they say, like, you are with us. Open your thoughts. You can see our thoughts. And it's this really sort of touching sort of solidarity. It's like the good side of the Borg that we've never seen before. We've only seen them saying, resistance is futile, you will be assimilated. Now we sort of see what it's like on the inside. They're saying,
compassion.
Our strength and your strength. It's compassion. It's, it's community. And so that's really cool.
It's profound community, in fact.
Yeah,
it's like
it's the most profound community. And there's this great scene where Chakotay sees the thoughts of the other members, like their memories, and one of them is like the woman, and he sees like this plant that this flower that she thought was really cool, and she's like walking with this old guy. It must be your grandfather. Anyway, and then after that, like, so Chakotay gets healed, and the woman is hanging out with Chakotay afterwards, and eventually they realize they can still read each other's thoughts, and that's like this great intimate moment, and then they have sex, and it's very exciting. But anyway, the beef story is going on back on the Voyager. They go over to the deactivated Borg cube, and the B'Elanna Torres says, with great portent, she says, maybe the Borg were defeated by something even more powerful than them. And anyway, they decide to bring a Borg back to the ship to do some investigations. Yeah. And the doctor's like prodding the Borg or something, and then the Borg pops up and moves around, and they realize, oh shit, the Borg might come back to life. Anyway, back on the planet, the Borg, the ex-Borg lady, the blonde lady, says, in order to stop this war on this planet, the only way we could do it is to restore the unity that we used to have, and that's going to be by reactivating our giant Borg link. And for some reason, only Voyager can allow them to do this. It has something to do with the cube. And so Chakotay goes up to the Voyager and tells Janeway this proposition that they could save all these people by reactivating their Borg link at the risk of, activating the cube, and then the Borg just destroy Voyager horribly. And so Janeway weighs the options very carefully and decides, no, this is too dangerous. We're not going to help them in this way. And so Chakotay, respects the decision. He goes down. As he's on the way down in a space shuttle with B'Elanna Torres.
Actually, on the way back up. He's on the way back up.
He goes down and then tells them, and they understand, and he goes back up. And he's in the shuttle with B'Elanna Torres, and he starts hearing the voices again. They say, we need help. They say, help us. Mm-hmm. And it's not just a cry for help, because he can't resist this thought. And he actually ends up shooting B'Elanna Torres and losing control and going into,
So it's questionable what's going on internally at this point. Like, it may be the case that they're so strong that he can't counteract them, or it may be the case that he's just so like, get out of my head, stop telling me what to do, that he just gives in so that he doesn't have to resist them or anything. So,
but there's definitely an element of coercion.
Yeah. Having someone in your head telling you what to do, it's like a schizophrenic. So what happens is they direct Chakotay to go into the Borg cube and do what he has to do to activate their collective on the planet or whatever. And he's running around in the Borg cube, and they're telling him, like, go to station, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We are with you. Our thoughts are your thoughts. That must be what it's like to be in the Borg. Anyway, Tuvok and some other Voyager guys are there trying to prevent anything bad from happening. They're getting in a firefight with Chakotay, and they end up detaining him, but not before he ends up activating something in the cube, which activates the sort of mini collective on the planet, activates the cube in a very scary way. They all go back to the Voyager. They're very worried about the cube. Suddenly the cube blows up, and they get a message from the planet which says, we are the Borg Cooperative, and thank you for helping us. And then they're all sort of disturbed. And Janeway looks over in horror, right?
Yeah.
We just see her kind of disturbed. She looks into the distance. But go ahead. Yeah.
So on one hand, the cooperative has good intentions, as we saw before. On the other hand, they have this coercive power, and Chakotay points out, are they really going to be able to keep their good intentions with this kind of power? And, the cooperative, the collective, it's clearly just like the same thing. But, okay.
Well, we would think, or we would hope not, but probably.
We would hope not, but it looks like it's going in that direction. They're already bossing Chakotay around. Anyway, that's the episode.
Which is funny, to start, and that was a great summary. Thank you, Richard. To start, I think this may have been the origin of the Borg.
Something like this?
Something like this happens where, we've got technology, we've got the ability to link, we love the feeling of being connected. It feels really good, makes sex really funner, and it also, makes us have to we never get to feel alone, which is great, because we know loneliness activates the anterior cingulate cortex, the part of the brain that lights up when you're in physical pain. So we humans, we don't want to feel lonely. So it caters to a really deep, profound need for humans. And then, this technology connection also helps us to heal each other somehow. So, you know, the issue is when they
through
start
the neuroelectric fields.
Okay, yeah. So, which is just like technological telepathy. Let's just call it that. So, anyway, like the real question is, where is the will of the collective coming from? And like in a situation like that, does the will of the collective like suddenly that's where the issue comes from, is the overriding of free will and the imposition of that will onto groups. And like, so I don't know if some sort of Borg programming switched on. It sounded like they were a unique group, but like in the case of the original Borg, it must have been some programming that made these people who willingly chose to get together and for the mutual benefit of all, like their will got overwritten by the programming or something.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be programming. I mean, it could just be that when you have the people linked, it just, as an emergent property, they have this single collective will. And it could be that one, you know, that might originally be about community and whatever, but as it goes on, as they get more and more powerful, sort of all the goals fall away except just growth, like a cancer increasing the size of the collective.
Acquisition of more power, yeah. It's kind of like when you analyze the psychology of rioting or like large groups. You know, everybody operates in a different way because of groupthink and because of anonymity, and it just becomes a more visceral, instinctual activity. So,
although the Borg are not visceral and instinctual, they're very methodical and they think a lot. I mean, that's the scary thing, is they have all the sort of heartlessness of a mob, but they have all the intelligence of their individual brains.
It's like smart zombies. Yeah. I keep trying to bring it back. Make it something that is relatable for a horror film person. So, I thought it was interesting. I thought it was good. It was entertaining. I thought the music was good. The colors were good, especially right after he activates the Borg cube. Like, for some reason, I think this is the highest aesthetic expression of the Borg, when they're like really colorful rainbow colors. I don't know why they need that many colors on the Borg cube. Like, what does it even do?
Voyager is just colorful in general.
They've got eyepieces. Each Borg has an eyepiece to help them see better. I don't know why they even need special lighting. I mean, so, yeah.
Maybe they just like it.
Yeah, maybe they do. That'd be really funny. Like the Klingons like red.
Yeah.
A lot. The sense of dread and terror that they induce here is really palpable. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, when they encounter that dead Borg cube, everyone's reaction and just the appearance of it is really pretty frightening.
Yeah. So the acting was good on that. Let's see.
I think Chakotay's acting was good. His sort of mixture of admiration and really deep suspicion of these people.
Yeah. It was really well portrayed.
He was sympathetic to him, but he always sort of deep down knew there's evil here. Yeah. He
was seeing in the unsaid what was hidden and possible for these people, that maybe these people are too good-hearted and good-natured to even realize themselves.
Yeah.
That the monstrosity of collective will might take over them and seek just this will to power rather than to actually organize and help people.
Yeah.
So, I liked the Borg corpse scenes. The Doctor says, "Nothing like the vacuum of space for preserving a handsome corpse." It was such a characteristic, like, Doctor thing to say. So the Doctor is this artificially intelligent medical, like, physician, and he's kind of askew from normal people, but he's also really good at his job. And so, like, he'll make comments that are, like, scientifically on par, but just everybody else is just kind of like, what?
Would a vacuum really preserve a body? Doesn't like it make your eyes boil and that kind of stuff?
Maybe they were just wrong. The science advisor was out to lunch when they wrote this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't
know. Maybe it's the neuroelectric field.
This is Richard's answer to everything. We'll get to your comments soon. We're almost there, Destiny. So there are 3 things, real quick. There's a notable difference in Voyager Borg versus Next Generation Borg. The visual effects, the makeup department, they're a different entity, clearly.
Oh, I learned on the internet the Borg makeup in this was actually just from First Contact.
Oh,
in this episode.
Well, we should have watched First Contact first then. Oops.
That's on the agenda.
Yeah, that's like next week, isn't it?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay, we'll figure it out. So I also thought this was cool in showing one response to being freed from the collective that was different from the last one that we've seen, where everybody was confused and sort of resentful with you.
Yes.
It's happened before where they're free and they just get all upset at the people who freed them. And anyway, so there were spoilers for the upcoming episode. Like half a season later on Voyager, you get this menace that is more terrifying than the Borg, that's like threatening the Borg's survival. And like, I think the writers were showing their hand a little bit too early. They were like, hey, guess what we got? Guess what we're going to show you? Huh? And they had B'Elanna like say this thing like, the Borg, maybe somebody worse than them attacked them. And I mean, in retrospect, like that line of dialogue was really cool considering what I know about the future of the show. But I feel like they shouldn't have done that because, like, you don't want the viewers thinking in that way yet. You want it to be a total surprise.
I thought it was cool. It was if you're not already attuned to what's coming, you'd probably miss that line.
Yeah. So I put mental link bow chicka wow wow, which we already talked about that.
Yeah. That's the whole like, yeah. I mean, I think the idea of like psychically mediated sex is they go into Babylon 5 also has that.
Yeah.
And I think it's handled a bit more interestingly there.
Well, this is actually part of the idea of like cultivating superpowers, like tantra and other stuff. You can, and orgasmic meditation too, is like you can start to feel your partner's body and your partner's experiences to a degree that your limbic system allows for, but which we're encultured not to feel each other and not to be open in that way. So it's a legit human possibility. Maybe not straight up telepathy, but yeah, deeper experience. Speaking of which, we had a lot of like interesting thoughts as we watched our 15 minutes of the episode. Destiny says nothing makes sense. Which
I say that.
There was
it the last 15 minutes or the first 15 minutes?
The last 15 minutes.
I see.
He's like, that makes sense. Nothing made sense. Well, one of the questions was, if we could all hear each other's thoughts and experience each other's experience, will we empathize more or less? And I think we would empathize more. I don't know. I'm curious about you guys, what you think.
I think I can agree with that, but I think over time you might get tired of that. If I don't know, like we were talking about the whole connection thing, and I think one reason connection is so special and intimate is because it's not something that you get to experience with every single person all of the time. Mm-hmm. So once you do that, is it still special, and is it still something that you want is kind of my question, and I think that could maybe wear off. Yeah,
would you get tired of it? Instead of feeling like safe, coddled, happy, warm and fuzzy because you're always getting to be in everybody else's head, like would you just be like, all right, this is too much. Let me go, please. I'm done.
Maybe you'd feel like you'd just get tired of that and you just wouldn't want to do anything other than assimilate more people.
Yeah, maybe that's why they assimilate more people. Is
they just got bored.
The bored Borg.
No, I mean
I'm a bored
like
Borg.
If you've got empathy with people, it's kind of like they become part of your body. And if part of your body is hurting, sometimes you feel empathy for that part of the body in the sense that you like, I don't know, live in that pain. But sometimes you're just like, no, like I need to ignore this and go on, right?
Yeah.
And so in the same way, you can see how
having
having the constant connection might actually make you less empathetic in a lot of cases.
Ah, interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, at first you would get into people's experience, Like you would have their experience for yourself, and they would be more.
I mean, like the first time you feel pain or whatever, it's overwhelming, and you're in it, and Yeah. But if eventually you get to the point that you just have to deal with it and do whatever you want to do otherwise.
Right. So that
maybe that's why it becomes so easy for these collectives to suppress the will of an individual. Like to get Chakotay to attack his crewmates, they must have seen that the great cognitive dissonance that caused him, and they still decided to make him do it. They must have felt his, pain about that.
They experienced his like ambivalence about it, and his desire not to do it.
It's a two-way link.
It's funny because they made him do it anyway. So you're saying the Borg actually, in assimilating people, for him, maybe not before him, but for him at least, this group experienced his basically feeling of being raped by having his free will stolen from him, which means that maybe they shouldn't be, maybe there is something about that collective that's different than the Borg collective, because if they can disjunct, like it looked like they weren't always feeling everybody else's thoughts. Like maybe they can turn it on and off. And maybe if they can turn it on and off, it can be used as a tool rather than a thing that drives them all.
Yeah.
That makes it, yeah. So, yeah. I guess that we covered all of the questions just now. That's funny. I had the question, would we want to hear everyone's thoughts? Like some people might be boring and dumb and annoying and self-hating or something. But I think existing in a collective might be restorative and healing for some. It also would be extremely repressive for people like me, because I like having my thoughts be unique and different and speaking them in front of large groups of people. And that's what makes it interesting, is that you don't already know what I'm going to say.
That's true. That's a good point.
That's why I say it.
I already know.
Don't say it.
Yeah.
Stop.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Richard, I think this gave us a lot of insight into the Borg, and according to our agenda, next week we are doing, let's see, Star Trek First Contact. Great.
Outstanding.
Cool. Outstanding. This is so First Contact is hailed as the most mainstreamly acclaimed and as a good film. Just normal people went to see the movie and were like, yeah, I know nothing about this. This is really good. Okay, great. It was also the one where I was really young and I saw that the trailer for it, and I saw that it was PG-13, and I cried because I was like, I can't see it. I'm not 13. My mom brought me anyway. Yeah, it was great. So yeah, Richard,
story.
any closing? No, it wasn't. It wasn't a great story. I mean, I guess it was great that I saw it anyway. But any closing thoughts, Richard?
I was pleasantly surprised by this episode. My baseline expectations from Voyager are pretty low, so I was pleased that this was enjoyable and gave me something to think about.
Yeah. I thought it was much better than I remembered, actually. I guess because I've never really asked myself these questions or analyzed it, which is the whole point.
Yeah.
Start to get you to ask questions like, should I really hate that black person for being black? Which probably said by no racist ever. I don't think that ever happened that way, but anyway. Yeah. I give this episode 9 out of 10. I think it was well done. Yeah.
I'd agree.
Yeah. Destiny?
I have no context. I also only watched a small portion of it, so I don't know that my rating would be fair.
Okay.
But I am open-minded about it. So.
Do you give it a plus or a minus?
I'm feeling really neutral. I've taken that small step of okay, I feel that this could be positive.
This could be something worth watching, maybe.
Maybe so.
One small step for Destiny. One giant leap for Destiny kind. All right, well, I think this podcast was a big success. You agree, Richard?
It is.
Yeah, not to be too self-congratulatory, but this was fairly high quality. I thank all of our listeners for listening, and we look to see you at the next one. Thanks for joining us.
Good luck and congratulations.
And good night.